Welcome to Job Tales, the show where I interview people from all over the world about their profession. Through my podcast, I wish to inspire you by giving an overview of all the jobs existing out there. I met Jaco Beukman several years ago at a hike in South Africa. Back then, I could already tell that he loved the outdoors, adventure, and photography. Years later, Jaco is a successful safari expert and organizes bespoke trips for selected clientele. He had to work hard to get there, and in this episode of Job Tales, he shares with us the steps that took him to where he is now. Jaco, hi, nice to see you again, and nice to remember how we met on a hike in South Africa. That's awesome.
It's great to see you again, and yeah, I remember those hikes really well.
Yeah, it's so good. Now that you say, I remember them as well. And now, 8 years have gone by, and you have become a safari expert, actually an Africa safari expert. Tell me about your path to becoming what you are today.
Yeah, Laura, yeah, it's an amazing path. I didn't actually study tourism or any of safari industry. I studied in university graphic design and communication and photography and the history of art. But I always knew that I love Africa so much and travel and nature. So after finished university and I studied working, I always wanted to go to nature. So I met a guy, and this guy introduced me to the safari industry and said that, yeah, you can actually do a job in taking people to Africa in big trucks. And I never knew that this is a job and that you could take people to Africa. So I immediately studied a lot of things. And then uninvitedly, I just walked into the office of a company in Cape Town and said, I want to work for you. And they looked at me funny from up and down. But I think because I looked kind of ready and I had a Leatherman on my side and everything that they were doing in the workshop wasn't scary to me. I just knew exactly what it was because I also have an engineering background. So I understand all the technicalities of camping and fixing engines and broken gearboxes and so forth. So they had an interview with me, and 2 days later they phoned me and said, "When can you start?" And I'm like, "Immediately." And so that's where it started.
Yeah, and it started as how, what were you doing for that company?
So for this company, I decided I'm going to drive these big overland trucks. So big overland trucks take about 24 people. And then for 110 days, you would be driving through like 6, 7, 8 different countries in Africa, all the way from Cape Town to Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda. And I was going to work my hands off, pitch tents, cook 3 meals a day, drive the truck, fix all the broken engines, and just sleep very, very little. Really crunch time. But I learned a lot in a very, very short time.
Amazing. So you had a license for such a truck, I imagine.
I immediately went to go get this license because I knew I was going to need it. So even before I stepped into the office, I went and I did the license without even driving a truck before. I organized a truck from a friend, and without even writing the exam, I just went to the testing center and applied, and I passed. So I had the license already.
How long did it take you to get the license?
This was in 2010 that I did it.
So do you think your studies helped somehow to get started in that field?
I think my original studies in university helped because I studied communication and photography. And communication, I think, is key, whether it's in a relationship or whether it's dealing with people in a boardroom or taking people on safari in Africa. I think communication really, really helps on an emotional level, intelligent level, and how everything goes. I think communication is just so important. So that helped me. Photography helped me a lot. And also because I'm an artist, I think I pay attention to detail quite a lot, not just in art, also in people. So the smallest nuances that people make or their personality changes, I can pick it up like I'm reading a book from start to finish, and I can just see it from your eyes. So I think my original studies really helped. And the further studies that I did, all related to tourism, they really, really help because they were more in depth and more specific into the field. So yeah, study definitely. There's no way you can do life without studying at one stage.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. No, I'm glad to see. So when you did your studies, did you have an idea in mind of what you were going to become before you got into the whole safari and tourism world?
No, I did not. Actually, after school, I went to work for 1 year in the Drakensberg. That's a big mountain range in South Africa. Every fortnight I would go home. But this time I did my electrical apprenticeship and used it here to think about what do I actually want to study in life. Because after you finish with school and you're 18, a lot of people finish their studies and then they actually studied the wrong thing. So I just wanted to make sure I grow up a little bit, earn some money, get to know life a little bit more before I go to study.
So you did a hiatus of a year or so between.
Yeah, 1 year hiatus where I worked really hard.
Oh, you were,
Um,
yeah. It's not. It was not holidays. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I didn't go like overseas and whatever. I just went to do my electrical apprenticeship.
It was cool.
Mm.
Why the electrical apprenticeship?
Yeah, it's a bit of a funny story. My dad's an electrical engineer, but my mom is a musical teacher. So I think I've got the brain of both.
Awesome.
So I can really be an engineer. I can be very methodical and I understand technical things from the get go. But I also understand music and art and the other things in life. I understand that fully. So for me in my life, I think it was a long time a battle to decide which way am I going to go because I can do both. And so I think I did both and decided eventually to do something completely different, which is now safaris in Africa.
You know, when you say safari, everybody is really thinking the most amazing job because you're outdoors, you're with the wildlife, nature, and lodges. There are amazing lodges out there. So, describe a little bit more of what you do today in your daily job.
So it's not camping anymore like it used to be in the past, and it's not 24 people anymore. Now it's upmarket people that are in their 50s and 60s or families, and it is smaller groups. It's very bespoke, it's very custom built itineraries that I design from start to finish. I communicate with my clients from the beginning. Whatever time it is in South Africa, they mostly from America or Canada. So whenever they are awake, I'm awake and I keep the communication line going. And then I design an itinerary where we fly. We fly from Safari Lodge to Safari Lodge, and we will be exclusively paired on our vehicles, going on safari and looking at lions and leopards. And we will do safaris where we walk. We will do night drives with a spotlight to see leopards and nocturnal animals. And we will have amazing meals prepared for us, 5 star. Not that I have to cook anymore. The cooking is finished for me now, so everything gets done for me. And sometimes we're on a boat, we cross a river, or we go into the Okavango Delta and have nice canoe safaris. Or we'll go witness the Great Migration in Tanzania, see the Masai Mara in Kenya, or we track mountain gorillas or chimpanzees in Rwanda or Uganda. It's just very, very nice. So from start to finish, I guide the people. I become their friend. I show them everything. I teach them photography if they want to, birds, nature, and in the end, or even astral photography. And in the end, I take them to the airport, make sure they fly home safely.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And so between driving a 24 person truck and now, what was the path that you took? Like you continued to work at the agency for a while, and then did you gather experience like that, or did you also change agencies and then became independent?
Two things happened. I did eventually change agency, not the 24 people anymore in big trucks, to a different agency to do the similar thing.
Yeah.
But the second thing that happened is I realized for myself, because the clientele on those tours were mostly between 18 and 25, 26. And even though I have a lot of energy, sometimes I have to dial down my own energy because I'm just so blessed with so much energy. I realized that the conversation of the people are starting to become shallow for me. And
Yeah.
I'm always very attentive to understand when something on the inside of me is changing. So then I can have two choices. Either I have to pull out of the industry completely, or I have to make a mind shift. And so for me, it was always the mind shift. I try and overcome this trouble by doing a mind shift. So I analyze the problem and see I can't stay with these people anymore. I have to move on to something different that fits me because I never want to be in the scenario where the clients or the guests coming to Africa look at me and they see less and less passion in this person that's leading the trip. I always want to give 500% of myself. So I knew I had to make a change. So I studied more things. I put my CV out there, and finally National Geographic contacted me, and I worked for them, and I still work for National Geographic. But I gradually made a move because I decided I need to move out of this kind of industry to a more upmarket part of the same industry. And it incurred me to change a few things. And so I immediately did it. I just applied the change and I put my mind to what do I want to be, what do I want to look like, and then trace back the steps. How do I get there?
So, how did you make those changes? Meaning, like you said that you studied different things. What did you study? What did you specialize on that you didn't have before?
So I had a photographic diploma, which was really helpful, especially in National Geographic. A lot of people think that National Geographic, the yellow rectangular, is always about photography. So in this one industry partner that I worked with, as soon as they had a relationship with National Geographic, I was the first one to be pushed forward because I was the only guide that was a photographer. So immediately that helped me a lot. But then a lot of other studies I did, biology, biodiversity, ecology, oceanography, climate change, all sorts of certificates that I studied. And some of them even helped me to get a job in Antarctica, taking people on photographic tours in Antarctica before, which I would have never thought. But oceanography really opened my eyes to understand a few different things about the sea, because Africa is not about the sea. And so, yeah, and I always make sure that I keep myself updated. So if I feel or see that there's a little bit of a change in this tree, I immediately look, is there something else that I need to upskill myself, whether it's a study or if it's just a practical program that I need to upskill so that I can be noticed and taken forward.
Okay, awesome. So that means you went to the university and took a course, or there were classes like this, just like on a practical side.
No, on a practical side, I had no time to go and attend class and sit in class like when I was 19 years old anymore. So I always had to do it either night classes or online classes, or one time I even skipped the whole year of classes and I just asked them, could I pay you the money for the year? But then I just write the exam at the end of the year and I will study everything on myself whenever I have time because I had work. I couldn't go to class. And so they agreed. So sometimes I had to make plans like this just because I'm an adult now. I can't sit in class anymore. The practical, I always had to make decisions. How am I going to fit it into my working life now?
Yeah. Okay. What do you find was most rewarding for you in the last, decade, or I don't know how long you've been doing this?
Yeah, I've been doing this now since 15 years. So I think the most rewarding for me and still is today is if I can see my client or the guest that come to Africa happy. If they are happy, overjoyed, fully immersive in the activities that they do and the things that they see, then I am so happy. And I always try and excel in myself and how I approach things so that I can be sure that people will have that experience. And on a personal level, I think if I look back at where I started, sleeping 4 hours a night with earplugs in my ears and cooking meals every single day, 3 meals for 26 people, and pitching tent and sleeping in horrific scenarios, to where I'm now, flying helicopters and staying in nice places. I feel that it is progress, but it's not the end. I also don't think that anyone should be praised for it. I just think it's hard work and dreams that I had and practical ways for me to achieve those dreams.
What do you think are the main skills that you need to have, or if you think of the preparation you need to do for your customers, your clients coming next week, what kind of skills in terms of hard skills, of course, like if it's organizational skills or language skills, but also soft skills, what do you think are the most tactic ones?
So definitely you have to be good with people because you're going to work with people. So if anyone wants to approach this industry where you take people on safaris or tours in Africa, then you have to be super good with people, good communicator. You have to understand personalities really, really well. You have to be a good problem solver because sometimes it's not just physical, practical problems that happen with a safari vehicle that has a flat tire or a broken engine. Sometimes it is people. There could be a personality clash, or there could be something that could really turn awkward if you don't know how to handle it. So I always pray for wisdom and how to solve human problem. And I think that's a soft skill that really, really helps a lot. Other things that you have to be a good organizer. You have to be very methodical in how you plan and prepare all your paperwork before you go on tour. Because on tour, I don't want to be that person that looks like I'm continuously working on my phone or sorting papers. I want to do all that before so that once the tour starts, my time is 100% the clients. And that really helps.
That helps. Okay, so preparation, organization, and Antarctica. So do you need a specific training for that?
Yeah, for Antarctica, Antarctica doesn't belong to any country, but there's a governing body that has a set of rules that companies, individuals, organizations need to they have to achieve these rules before they can go there. So it's an exam that you write. Everyone that goes there, except guests, guests can go, and we just make sure that they fall within the rules. But if anyone is going to work in Antarctica, you have to study the exam, pass it, and it's high. It's an 85% pass rate, and then you can work in Antarctica. Whatever profession you have, whether it be oceanographer or ornithologist or the ship captain or wherever, whoever you are, photographer, you need to pass this exam. So yeah, I had to study and pass.
Okay, okay. And how much time, I mean, like, let's say, how much time do you have free in your job as opposed to someone who works 9 to 5, having 4 or 5 weeks of holidays per year? I just want to see which range we are talking here.
So before, when I started, I didn't have a lot of time. 1 year could pass, and I would probably see Cape Town 3 times before the year lapses. The rest of the time, I would just work every single hour of every single day for 330 days. But now I choose which tours I want to do. I choose my own calendar. If clients approach me, then I will look at my calendar and see if I have time. And do I actually want to do the tour? Is their budget fitting for how much effort I'm going to put in? And so I really determine my own schedule now. Of course, I'm not going to work too little, but if I can fill it with like 10 tours a year and it takes about 200 days of my year, then it means I will have the rest of the year off. But that off time is really part of a little bit of marketing and sending up some videos on the internet and maybe planning some future itineraries or upskilling myself.
Yeah. Yes, that was going to be my next question as to how do you promote yourself? Because when you were working for an agency, of course, the agency had the job for you. But when you switched, how did you start? How did you find your first client?
Yeah, so luckily I've been in the industry so long that there's a lot of people that know me and they have now become adults themselves, they have families. And since I've always had this outlook that I'm going to give 200% of my time and a lot of effort, and I'm fun. So I think people remember that
That's
forever.
good. People
You
like to
can't
be
just
around
be
you.
good at your job. You need to be a fun person and people need to enjoy you because I think a lot of the safari is also made by the guide who is leading the trip because the leader can make or break it. So I'm always fun and understandable and I approach things in a very, very nice human way. And so people remember that. So now if I put out a little bit of marketing material, like just only a little video that I put on Facebook or a little Instagram post, or I just say to people, hey, come to Africa with me, then there's a lot of people that respond. And then word of mouth, they tell their friends, and their friends contact me. And the next thing you know, I've put forth an itinerary that they accepted, deposits are paid, and off we go.
Awesome. You know what? It
Yeah.
makes me think I wanna come on one of your trips.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You will have such a good time. And
Yeah.
we will laugh a lot.
laugh a lot. Yeah, awesome. Plus now I'm a pilot, so I could even fly from one lodge to the other. I can take your guests.
Yeah,
The only thing I cannot be
definitely.
paid for it. It's like it's for leisure. So my
Especially coming from Europe, you would enjoy coming to Africa when it's summer here and winter back home.
yeah, yeah, so much. So yeah, looking at your life overall, private life, professional life, do you find there are some compromises you need to make in order to fulfill your job the way it is today?
Yes, definitely. So you're not going to be home always. So you have to make peace with it that sometimes you're going to miss friends, you're going to miss things that happen back home. Luckily, there's always internet. Back in the day, it wasn't like that. But yeah, you can tune in just the way we are doing now, communicating over technology. Plus, you're going to deal with a scenario where relationships are going to be a little bit tough because you are sometimes gone and away. On a more practical note, the bank will sometimes look at you funny because you're the person that's sometimes in the country and sometimes you earn your money from somewhere else. So when it comes to banking and tax, it's also a little bit funny. And yeah, sometimes people are never going to know where you are because they just assume that you're always gone. Because sometimes when you're back home, you just try to be quiet for a day or two because you are recouping or just settling back in.
Yeah, yeah. No, I see the point. Yeah. Is there anything that of course you've learned many things, but any lesson you've learned? You said, okay, the hard way, like, oh, I wish I had known that before when I started, or I wish someone had warned me about something that you could have done, which basically you could now say to the young listeners today. It's like, okay, guys, you want to do this in your life, but be careful of this or that.
Wow. If I would have to answer to a young person, I would say be careful to not just enjoy yourself so much that you forget about like rules of the company because you can really mess up your name if you do things wrong. Yeah, you have to stay professional and find the balance to be as fun as possible but still professional. So for a young person, I would say that would be good advice. For someone that is a bit older, I would say you want to think about the rest of your career and that you can't do this and keep doing it the same way as if you are still 22. You have to still start to think about your future and see how can I do this differently because if you are that young, you're not going to earn a lot of money. So you have to start earlier to think about how am I going to make this work for me financially. So I think that was for me the greatest lesson that I learned and something that I wish I started a little bit earlier to pull out of the organization always feeding me work as opposed to I can stand on my own feet, get my own clients and be serious about I want to build my own company. So I think I could have started maybe 2 or 3 years earlier, but yeah, that's the only thing, yeah, that I think I could have done earlier.
When I'm thinking about your job in general and more specifics, are there like specialties in your job? Like you're talking about being a guide, safari guide. Is there some specialties within being a safari guide that someone could specialize in, concentrate on something more rather than other let's say disciplines in the same field?
Yeah, correct. There's plenty to choose from. So as soon as you've finished your general guiding exam, which is also a government regulated exam and a Southern Africa body that regulates that, then within that you can specialize whether you want to be a walking safari guide handling rifles or if you're going to be a birding guide or if you're going to be like there are more specialities. Most people will just stop at being the general guide because that gives you the license to do all this guiding. I've always shunned away from carrying rifles because I think it's not my thing. But you are right, there are specialities, and I have looked into some of them, like birding. I'm really good at birding. Yeah, so maybe in future. But at the moment, most people that want to come to Africa just want to see the wildlife of Africa. So I think all my qualifications are perfectly suited.
Okay, okay. The big fives, and then usually a safari would, like in a nutshell, like in 30 seconds, what does it boil down to? Like in terms of time and things to do and duration.
It means we're going to be on the animal schedule when you come to Africa. So it means we're going to rise early in the morning before the sun has risen, sometimes have breakfast, or we would just head immediately onto the safari vehicle, go out and see the predators and the nocturnal animals go to bed. Lions, leopards, and cheetahs are very active early in the morning. Our hyenas are still out there. And then later in the day, all the plains animals, giraffes, zebras, wildebeest, and kudus, they are all out and about. Then we go back to camp, we have a nice breakfast, or we have a nice brunch, or sometimes we eat in the bush. And then siesta time in the middle of the day, because the animals do the same. We have nice lunch. Then we enjoy high tea. And then we go out for afternoon safari, which will have us all the way to sundowners, somewhere in a nice location in the bush. And then eventually we drive back to camp with a spotlight to see the nocturnal animals, again, leopard and lion and hyenas as they go about.
Wow. And that starts again the next day.
The next day we start again, and we do this for like 3 days in one destination before we fly to another part of the country, or we cross border into a different country and do similar safaris but in a completely different environment, so that there's a nice diversity. And sometimes I even mix in cultural events where there's like a holistic experience to Africa, not just lions and leopards.
Well, that sounds fascinating, and I'm happy you chose this path. It's and it also that it's open for others to do, right? I mean, you can make this your own, living and your own full-time profession, which is awesome. Is there anything else you would like to tell our young audience before we leave?
I would say the girls don't have to be scared of this industry. It's in South Africa, where I'm sitting at the moment. It's National Women's Day, so it's a holiday. But very, very few girls actually sort of go into this field. I don't know why, but it's very possible for girls.
Yeah.
They don't have to be scared of carrying rifles or driving safari vehicles. So I would say for young girls, it's also possible. They can achieve it. It's not just 80% male sort of area.
Nice. So if there's a girl or two who are inspired by you and want to talk to you, may I give your contact to them?
I would be happy to give them pointers and set them in the right direction, and even let them meet up with the very, very few girls that I know in the industry.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds very good.
Yeah.
But Jaco, it was really nice to talk to you. I thank you very much for your time, and I wish you all the best for the rest of your career.
Thank you very much, Laura. It was fantastic to speak to you. Enjoyed your smiley face, and happy to chat to you soon again.
That was Jaco Beukman, Africa Safari expert. You will find more episodes on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast, as well as any of your favorite players. I'm always looking for new guests, so please send me ideas to jobtalespodcast@gmail.com. See you next week for a new episode of Job Tales.